Awesome, guys. We're going live right now? Beautiful. Hey, guys, welcome back. Glad to have you guys here, man. Really exciting. Let me go ahead and introduce the guest here. My man, Phil Foster from philfostertraining.com. Is that correct?
philfosterfitness.com.
philfosterfitness.com. You do training, you do supplements, you do hormone coaching. So we got you here. And also my man, Hotep Jesus. He is a viral content creator. And you do a lot of stuff with tech startups and have done a lot of stuff that has gone incredibly viral with some controversial views that we want to talk about today, man. So I'm excited to have both of you here today, man. So let's go ahead and get this thing started. First off, Phil, you were just talking a question a second ago about hormones. Can you go into that? You were saying like an issue that you have with a lot of your clients.
A lot of my clients definitely are deficient in hormones. Almost all of my training clients that I coach, they are deficient. So when they sign up with my programming, basically what happens is I let them go their way for a little bit, and they don't see the results, and so I tell them, hey, this is what's actually missing, and we get the blood work done, and sure enough, they're deficient in testosterone. Their E's out of whack, and they're toast.
Yeah.
And what happens is they become clients, hormone clients. I get them hooked up with a provider, and the provider gets them going on the testosterone and gets their hormones in balance, and then boom, life is in line, man. They start losing weight. They start building muscle.
It is pretty crazy, especially when you study like evolutionary biology and you come to the realization that like the bigger, stronger men are not rewarded now like they were before, which is fine. That's a good thing for society because we have a more technologically advanced society. But before, it was the man who was able to, have a farm, be able to protect his family and his tribe. He would have more access to women, and therefore you had more men with higher testosterone.
That's right.
After that, like say 1850s, you started seeing fewer and fewer of that. Also, there's another study that shows that myopia is something that's much more prevalent now because of corrective lenses than it would have been like 300 or 400 years ago, because you would have been like, there would have been evolutionary pressure against people who were nearsighted, whereas now there is none. There's zero. So you see more people with myopia. So it's really interesting when it comes to the testosterone. Hotep, in your situation, I was listening to you talking to my buddy, Mike Rashid, and you had a conversation that I thought was really interesting where you were discussing the concept of like liberals manipulating people, and you said you can't have a conversation with liberals a lot of times.
Yeah, they don't want conversation.
Yeah,
they can't have conversation. If you have conversation, you might find understanding, and in understanding, then you don't need a mediator.
Yeah,
and that's where liberals like to inject themselves. Democrats, Bolsheviks, Mensheviks, however they come, they want to come in and they want to be the mediator of these conversations. So what they try to do is they try to stain your reputation, stain your name, so that people don't have conversations with you. So they'll say things like, well, if you voted for Trump, you're racist.
Yeah.
If you voted for Trump, you're a white supremacist. So that people will go, oh my God, you are so extreme, I can't even have a conversation with you. Because in conversation, like I said before, comes understanding.
Yeah. So going back to what you said before, it was funny because Destiny was on what's the show called? Graham Stephan show, and he said, I'm like one of the only people on this side of the aisle that will have a conversation. He says something to the effect
That's
of
true.
he says one of the things I can't stand about progressives, he goes, is that what they'll do is just say you're not worth having a conversation with because you don't agree with what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then he goes regardless of what you think about, like say Andrew Tate or Alex Jones, is like they're more entertaining than what we're doing. And so because of that, they're always going to be, and they're always willing to do these debates. Now, the counter to that, and I think there's a way to fix this, is that a lot of people on the left, like what Hotez, is that his name? The guy who wouldn't do the debate.
Dr. Peter Hotez.
Yeah. So in his situation, he knows if he goes on there, he's going to get shot at from all these different places. He believes this is conspiracy theory. This is conspiracy. This is conspiracy. And instead of having an overall understanding of like what the subject is, he has to refute each conspiracy thing. This is because I've done like 4 or 5 debates with flat earthers. And when you debate flat earthers, you think, well, I'll just explain that the earth is round and I should win the debate. What they do is they bring up these little conspiracies that you have to go against. And so I think, I don't know if you ever heard Neil deGrasse Tyson. He now won't do debates with anyone because every time he does one, they'll bring up a conspiracy and then it makes him look bad on camera. And the answer is, unfortunately, like 30 or 40 hours of study from both sides in order to actually have a real debate. And a lot of these people don't want to do that, which is what like Destiny, for all his, whatever you may believe about his political beliefs, he will do 80 hours of study so that he never gets embarrassed whenever he tries to do a show like that.
I hadn't had much opinion on Destiny.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that, you bring up a really good point.
Yeah.
Like the fact that he even have a conversation, I didn't peep that. I
Yeah.
never peeped that.
Yeah.
Because he's right. Like that's the only liberal that has like talked to us.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Damn.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, he's also in this thing where, shout out to Rollo, like he and these other people have gotten into this kerfuffle with Rollo where they try to set Rollo up to do some, and that to me is foul.
That's foul.
That is having a debate outside of good faith. And it's really hard because you want to have a debate with certain people, but if they were willing to argue outside of good faith, like I know this is a weird analogy. You guys are seeing what's happening with this Logan Paul thing where he's about to fight, and then the guy he's fighting against has posted videos of his fiance with 50 other men. Have you seen this?
No, I
It's
heard
kind
about
of
it.
messed up.
I mean,
man. That's
but
messed up.
like, what happens? Is this a debate now? Like, what happens? You saw the thing with Nick Fuentes. I went on with Nick Fuentes on a Valuetainment in Saucecast, and then all of a sudden, Alpha King Neem is on there. I don't know Alpha King Neem at all, and he just starts calling Nick Fuentes a micro penis, and like me and Rollo are sitting there, the same thing. We're like, now we have to defend Nick Fuentes. Like, how did this happen? Like, so what am I? Because
you're in there by proxy.
Yeah, but like, let's say we're having a debate, and then like my girlfriend throws a tomato can on you. Like, what am I supposed? Like, it's not a debate anymore. Like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? And so that's essentially what happens. And so, and it was actually Rollo who told me this. It was like they always just want blood. And so now you want to have a normal debate, and like nobody wants to do it because they just want blood. So we're in this position now where instead of people debating, people are getting further and further away into their own what's the word, echo chambers, and then you're not having a level of debate. But I did hear you before again with Mike where you were talking about when you're trying to convince other people, do you feel like it's useless sometimes, or do you feel like you can have a debate, or do you feel like you can have a discussion, or is it only people who just want to hear what you have to say? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm only speaking to anybody who wants to hear what I have to say. That's the difference, right? Like, not agree, but actually wants to hear what I have to say. That's the key. Because if you don't want to hear what I have to say, then we're not having a conversation.
Yeah.
When I have a conversation with people, I want to hear your side.
Yeah.
Right. And then we can have the dialogue. Most people don't want to have the conversation. What they want to do is they want to bully you in a conversation and say, this is what's right. You're wrong and you're bad. I just had a debate the other day with a family member who's, doing well in college, but it's a college kid. Right. And this college kid is, saying, oh, what about the immigrants at the border? And, you got to care for them. And I'm like, I just started pulling books off the shelf.
Yeah.
Right? You read this? Did you read this? Did you read this? She said, I don't read. I'm like, then why am I even, I have to, here's my issue with these conversations. I have to educate just to bring them up to speed.
Yeah.
To have the conversation.
Yeah.
So if they're not willing to learn from me, then usually it's not. But I'll have the conversation. But once I find out you're an idiot, I can't spend too much time with somebody who doesn't understand. Like the only one thing I said, she said, well, they're bringing families here. And I'm like, the majority of the migrants are single males, young single males. No, that's not true. Bring it up on Google. So I bring it up on Google. She goes, oh. And I'm like sometimes this is no point. So I get why sometimes the liberals will, that's the thing, they're out. Right?
Yeah.
Because that is a real thing where somebody technically is not equipped to have a conversation with you.
Yeah.
And they use that mostly because they've all been to Ivy League schools and indoctrinated, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, technically, but if you come on the battlefield, they can't hang with some of us.
Yeah, they want to be right, man. That's right. So they're persuading you to want to see their point of view and their side is right. 100% though, it is single males coming across the border. I'm from Texas, man. I see it.
Yeah. The other issue is like some people are good debaters. Like when it comes to like say a conversation about physics or biology or whatever, the people who are the biggest experts in these fields, I've had physicists on my show, they're not good debaters. And some of the people who are really good debaters are incredible salesmen, but they're not incredibly equipped in order to have like a detailed conversation about this, which is why I think the debates is the way it should work. You should have a Shapiro and a Cochran. You should have a guy who can get down and dirty in the weeds and a guy who has like the overall arching understanding. So like, for instance, if I was going to have a debate with a flat earther, I think it should be a guy who's anti-conspiracy theorist and another guy who's an actual physicist, and that would work. But no one's doing this. Like no one wants to take the time to do this or do the research. So I think in your situation, like for instance, when you say, do I want to hear it? Hannibal I'm a huge fan. The Battle of Cannae, when General Hannibal took on the Roman legion, was able to defeat them. And you had some interesting things to say about that. Most people have no idea what that is. They think Hannibal was a character on the A-Team, and they have no other concept of what that is. So you having a different take on that and having to question that, even though I don't know that I completely agree with all the stuff that you were saying about the 12 million Africans brought over from Africa beforehand. I still thought it was really interesting, the conversations that you had with Joe Rogan about that. What has happened since you've had that conversation? Do you still believe the same thing? Because you said before it was something you researched a long time ago. Do you still believe the same things that you believe? So just so we understand, the official history tells us there's 12 million people brought over, 10 million lived, 300,000 made it to the United States. Initially, the slave trade in the United States was 40% from that, and the rest came from the Caribbean. So, and then you have a belief that was different than that.
What was the belief I had?
Your belief was that they were already here beforehand. So they're basically the trade routes from it wasn't Namibia, Ghana, from Ghana to Portugal, not Portugal, I'm sorry, Brazil, and that's where the early African Americans or Africans came over to the New World.
Yeah. You know, the way that conversation goes for me is I like to just break it down to a very basic level.
Mm-hmm.
What you would do is you would take a look at Bartholomew. No, it was Columbus to de Saint-Angel. De Saint-Angel was he was the money guy behind Queen Isabella.
Yes,
right? And Queen Isabella is the one who basically financed, with the help of de Saint-Angel, Columbus's expedition. But my point is, when you look at the letter talks of not bringing slaves there, but taking slaves from there and coming back to Europe.
Sure.
Okay. So when people say, black people came from Africa, that is not wrong. But did you talk about the black people you took from the Caribbean and brought them to Europe?
And so your supposition is that the ones that got to the Caribbean got there before European colonization?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that's based upon the letter to De Las Casas.
Sure.
Illustrated when he described these black people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That's from Columbus's word himself. And he took slaves from there, brought them back to Europe.
Okay.
Right? Because he was really supposed to be on an expedition for gold.
Sure.
He wasn't finding no gold.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So because he didn't find any gold, he had to bring something back. If I asked him, you better bring something back. So he's bringing bodies back. But the common sense in that is, in economies, usually it's not a one-way thing.
Sure.
Right? It's secular. Right?
Yeah.
So when you look at slavery, to say, oh, black people came from Africa, it's like, yeah, that's true. They came from other places too.
Okay.
Right? So what we don't want to do is we don't want to omit parts of history.
Yes.
Because then you just get one side of history. We got to talk about it all, And I think that's the issue, is it's so like, oh, black people were taken from Africa. Well, in that case, now we have to talk about the fact that no, what you got was sold slaves by African emperors, kings, and chieftains, right?
Sure.
So,
but you're disputing the point of sale, meaning was the point of sale in Barbados and Turks and Caicos and Jamaica, or was the point of sale in Ghana and Nigeria and places like that?
Point of sale was in all those places.
Okay,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
For sure.
If Columbus left you at the fort, think about it like this: it's old times, right? 1492 or some shit, right? And Columbus leaves Michael Sartain at the fort.
Yeah.
As he goes and explores.
Yeah.
What you gonna do with your territory?
I'm gonna go explore that territory, try to conquer that area. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the rules that you govern under your watch, do not dictate all white people.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing. We like to take history and not nuance it and just say white people did this, black people did that, and that's the end all be all. And it's just like, well, how do you explain the African presence on the island of Hawaii?
Sure.
Right?
Right.
That's on the other side of America.
Right.
And that's in the 1800s. So how long have black people been over there?
Right.
Then you talk about the black presence in the Indonesian area, right? So obviously black people, we're going to hang near the equator. We need the motherfucking heat. That's just how we roll, right? It's the truth. It's the truth. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Well, so I mean, that's what anthropologists though bring up, is that the reason why sub-Saharan Africans were brought over was because of their ability to acclimate to like Mississippi in the South, or Georgia, or Louisiana.
Yes.
So that's part of the reason why. But because I mean, I believe your argument was something to the effect of like, why would you bring people over? And the counter argument to that would be the Native Americans wouldn't have been able to do that level of labor. So I don't know. Again, I'm really interested in the way that you're bringing up.
Why wouldn't they? Because they weren't melanated enough?
I mean, that could be a reason. Yeah. I mean, that was the point you brought up. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I remember a time in history where those two things were synonymous.
What do you mean?
With the Native and the African was synonymous.
You're talking about
to delineate.
Oh, you're talking about in the 15th century.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those two things were synonymous.
Yeah.
Why were those things synonymous?
The
African and the Indian.
Honestly, because we didn't even have a scientific method at that point. We just saw people as like they were either savages or Europeans. Kind of a binary belief. I'm not agreeing with it. I'm just saying like back then we didn't. I mean, we don't have. I mean, Newton isn't. He isn't alive until the 17th century. So like we don't even have a real scientific
understanding. Yeah,
we don't have a scientific understanding of anything until probably after the French Revolution. So I mean, I think that's why.
Here's my argument with the whole did black people get sold in slavery over to America, or were black people here already?
Yeah.
Here's my issue. Why is everybody putting the microscope on slavery of black people in this time period?
Yeah.
Why? That's my main issue.
I think the progressives do so for, like what you said before, you were talking about a victim mindset.
Right.
And I think conservatives are doing so for the opposite.
Well, conservatives are talking about it because liberals are talking about it.
Sure.
Conservatives don't have an ideology.
Okay. They just believe in conservatism.
No, they just respond to what liberals do.
Okay.
Mainstream media is when we're talking about mainstream media, it is what the left does, and then the right waits for the left to do something, and then they respond to it. Okay. So you'll have a campaign with Bud Light. Now everybody's talking about Bud Light. The left would do something. Lizzo, right? You don't have an ideology as a right-wing individual.
Yeah.
And that's what sucks.
Do you think it was always like that, or you're just talking about modern conservatives? Because I definitely agree with you now. I do believe conservatism tends to be a reactionary force. But I'm talking like in the 19, like say conservatives being in favor of us, whoever believed we should go to Vietnam or World War II or something like that.
Yeah.
Although conservatism meant something different before the 1960s.
Yeah. That's a very nuanced thing, right?
Yeah.
Because there's all different types of conservatives.
Yeah.
My true conservative is, I call them red whites who deal in blue collar work. You know what I'm saying? Down south. Like that to me is true conservative, right?
Yeah.
In an American sense. But the most conservative people I would say on the planet are probably Muslims.
Yes. It was really,
when I think of conservatives, I think of Muslims,
Yeah.
right? So when I look at modern conservatives, white conservatives in America, black conservatives, I'm like, you motherfuckers ain't conservative.
Yeah. Well, any conservative now would not be considered conservative to a conservative in 1940. He would look at us now and be like,
conservative 10 years ago.
Yeah, it would have been like, you want marijuana and wait, what, to be legalized?
Exactly.
Doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely the case. One thing I thought was interesting, because you made the point about Islam, and I thought when I was reading the Jonah Hill text messages, and I was like, well, this is obviously somebody not, the left was saying something to the effect of, this guy was not expressing boundaries. What he was doing was trying to be controlling. And I was like, there's not a single traditional Islamic man I know who would not agree with every single thing that Jonah Hill was saying. So by your estimation, every man in Islam is controlling. And every man in Islam is toxically masculine without exception. By your definition, that's when I read that, I was like, I don't want you to hang out with women who are loose. That I don't know a single, and again, I'm not making a personal judgment, because my girlfriend is a champion bikini model who poses in bikinis. This is not my judgment. I'm saying, if I'm looking at this thing from a situation of like, when people are saying he's being controlling, I'm like, well, I know an entire religion of men who would say the same things he's saying. So that's fine if that's your belief, but I need to hear you say all of Islam is nothing but controlling men who are toxically masculine and are gaslighting their women, because that's what I'm hearing. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that I'll be honest.
And I'm
with
saying
you.
this as a Protestant.
Yeah. I'm going to be honest with you. I said the same thing. The same thing as Jonah Hill says to her. I mean, I have no qualms with that at all. I think 100% he was not controlling. He was just leading from the front. He was doing what he was basically letting her know, this is what I want from you.
And for those of you guys that don't know, if you read the text messages, one of them states, if these are the things that make you happy, then I support it. He didn't say, you dumb bitch, get out of my life. He said, if these are the things that make you happy, I support it. But maybe we're not meant to be together. And then there's all these psychiatrists that come on TikTok and start saying, no, this is an example of controlling behavior. And I'm like, now you've ruined psychology, right? Because other psychologists are going to see this and think this is what you're supposed to do. And now you've taken all these women who are actually being abused and you've put them at the back of the line because they're stuck behind this moronic woman who thinks that she's been abused. Like somebody wrote me, they go, I hope you have a daughter and ends up with someone like Jonah Hill. Someone like Jonah Hill who's wealthy and fucking moral and wants his wife to not run around and act like a slut. Oh my God, I can't imagine my daughter being with someone like that. What a terrible punishment for me. I hope my daughter never ends up with someone like that. I just thought it was so ridiculous. Like one of the most one-sided arguments I've ever seen. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to furthermore and say, I don't think that what he said was inappropriate at all. I think that, that's the problem with today's society, right? Is this is so normalized, and that's the knee jerk from the psychologist and the people that have knee jerked over the situation with Jonah Hill is, we are at a place where we are in the timeline because men have accepted that kind of behavior from women. Yeah. And clearly he gave her a choice. I don't think we can be together if that's what you want. If that's going to make you happy, then we can't be together.
So, the reason why I brought that up is, I mean, we're just talking like a moderate level of what you might consider conservatism from Jonah Hill in that case. By the way, Jonah Hill, not a conservative, identifies as a feminist. And I believe in probably a year from now, I'm just making a prediction, he's going to come out, apologize for every text message he said, and throw every red pill person who supported him directly under the bus for supporting him. That's what I think is going to happen. Because his agent and his attorney are going to tell him to do so. You know what I'm saying? I think that's probably what's going to happen. But anyway, going back to what we were saying before, modern conservatism would not be considered conservative several years ago. For me, like personally, I'm conservative in that financially I'm conservative, fiscally I'm conservative. I think I love the fact that in this country we protect private property and you have the ability to become wealthy. Is it perfect? No, it's definitely not perfect. But I think compared to other countries, it's pretty great. And I want to support that system of economics that we have here. Again, do we have problems with inflation? We definitely have problems with inflation. Do we have problems with massive amounts of government spending? For sure. But compared to other places, I think free enterprise is protected here probably more than most other countries. Now, you've been in charge of 4 different startups. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, more than that, but yeah. I kind of wanted to go back to the previous.
Let's do it. Let's talk about it.
Talking about though, like inflation and money. Like, riff off of that. Like, keep going. Like, where are you going with that when you say that stuff?
So one of the issues is when we get to the inflation thing is I love the way this country is set up, and one of the things as soon as Biden was elected, and I didn't vote for Biden, I don't support Biden, but as soon as he shut down the Keystone Pipeline, and then all I heard was a recession was coming, and we're all doomed. And get ready for the recession. And it was always coaches who had like a coaching program on what to invest in during the recession. And this is 5 years ago. And every year I was like, hey guys, I don't think you know when a recession's coming. So I wouldn't listen to any of these people on YouTube. And then there was no recession in 2018. And then there was no recession in 2019. And then 2020 happened. And it was like, well, you didn't predict this recession. I guarantee this wasn't you predicting this. And then 2021 happened. And then 2022, there was an invasion of Ukraine. And I'm like, how many of you guys said the invasion of Ukraine was going to happen? Because I didn't hear that. So it's like one of these things where I keep hearing about a recession because of inflation. And again, one of the guys who says this every year is my buddy, Robert Kiyosaki. He's awesome. But every year, it's like recession is coming, recession is coming, recession is coming. And then I keep hearing, well, we're not on the gold standard. So therefore, this whole thing is going to collapse. And I'm like, no, we're the country with the B2s and the F-22s. I'm not really worried about this economy collapsing. So for me, I think things are not as bad as whenever I hear people talk about us having a Fed and that Fed being able to control the money supply. I think there's a certain level of negligence, but I think everyone's just trying to do the best they can. But let me say this: I still love this country.
Wait, what?
What do you mean?
Wait.
Well, yeah, because I'm going to circle on that too. When you're done, go ahead.
Right.
Yeah.
The Fed is doing the best that they can.
No, I think I don't mean the Fed in particular. But what I'm saying is, it's one of these situations where I heard Bernanke one time. He was saying, they asked him, where do you get your money managed? Or he goes, how do you manage your money? What are your investment ideas, and he goes, "Yeah, I let other people hang
There
it
was
out."
about $20 trillion. It was a disposition or a hearing with Ben Bernanke and Bernie Sanders.
Yeah,
And Bernie Sanders asked him, "Where did that 20 trillion go? Where did you invest that money? What banks?" And Ben Bernanke told him, "I'm not obligated to tell you that."
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Here's what I think is happening when I say that. It's one of these situations where a house of cards has been built and no one person is able to change it. And at the end, at the very top, I don't know that it's malfeasance as much as it is negligence. True. I think it's more a function of negligence. So when I say doing the best they can, it's like every president goes in there and be like, "I'm going to clean house."
It's not about the people, right? That's the problem. People get focused on, the people, and really we have to just understand the system.
Yeah.
Right? Because the people are interchangeable. You
sure.
drop Ben Bernanke and now we got, Gary Gensler or the other lady Powell, whatever her name is, right? Jerome Powell, I think he's over, where's he? SEC or somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So you have these players, but it's the system itself that is really the genius design. And we have to understand that genius design. But that genius design has permeated itself into all of Western society, specifically the entire North and South American continents in perpetuity.
Yeah.
As far as debt creation is concerned through the World Bank, talking about Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, the list goes on.
Sure.
Same thing in Africa. Africa, for example, we have a situation in Africa happening right now with Niger. And in Niger, they just overthrew their leader, right? How did France respond to that situation? Well, first of all, they responded very belligerent, and with military might. But the main thing that they wanted to focus on was their previous deal with moving things based upon the franc. So as long as you can have individuals moving in your currency, they'll rescind the occupation of the territory. The big thing is I always tell people, it's like, let's say you're a dog chained up. I give this dog 10 feet, this one 20, that one 50, that one a mile. You're still chained to the. So people look at America and say, "Oh, America is the most free." First of all, you understand America is not a nation. America is a corporation.
Okay.
Everybody knows this. Okay. So because America is a corporation, it's technically a project. A project is an experiment. So we are not a nation. We're an anti-nation. So you can't compare.
You're talking about the 10th Amendment, like the separation of states in the federal government.
No, I'm talking about America as is.
Okay.
It's not a nation.
It's a corporation, 100%.
It's a corporation, 100%.
Isn't it backed by the crown too? Or a piece of it's
not the United States now?
Isn't a piece of it backed by the British?
Not now. Probably not now.
What, America?
Yeah.
Well, there are several countries like Canada and Jamaica that were backed by the crown up until 1964, but now I don't think we'll be backed by the crown.
Here's my point. Yeah. Usually, nationality is based upon race.
Sure.
Usually, in America, we are a melting pot.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And we're allowing people to come across the border of all various different colors. We're providing hotel rooms for them and all various things. We don't care about the complexion of the nation. So if the nation's not binded by race, what is it binded by?
Dollars.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo. That's not a nation. That is a piece of a world economy. And through this experiment that they call America, they control all nations. They control it through Washington, D.C. and Langley. They control all nations. When you talk about NATO ain't shit without DARPA, without CIA. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
We are the military might of it all.
Okay.
These other foreign nations, France and whatever, they are holding on by a thread.
Got it.
We know this. We see the riots with Macron in France, right? They are holding on by a thread.
Yeah.
Why? Nationalism has dissolved, but nobody over there gives a fuck about money. That's not how they're driven. America's driven by the dollar.
Yes.
So you have no nation, right?
Yeah.
So America is really just bullying the rest of the world, which leads me to my last point is the CBDC. Once the CBDC goes around, we're going to have a BRIC CBDC, and then we're going to have a Western world CBDC through the World Bank and the IMF, and the World Bank and the IMF are the true colonizers of the world.
Do you think that those currencies would overtake the dollar?
There is not going to be the world reserve currency will not be the dollar at some point.
Okay. I mean, at some point, yeah.
Right.
That'll
At
go
some
away for
point.
sure. Yeah.
No, there'll be a BRICS currency,
Uh-huh.
and there's going to be they call them globalists. I call them Westernist. There's going to be a Westernist coin.
Okay.
And we will use, they might say it's the euro, the world dollar. Alex Jones be saying this shit, and he's fucking correct. Okay. Alex Jones is right when he says this is what's coming. But the world is being separated, and it's going to be BRICS versus the West, mostly backed by.
So I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. So one of the problems with, like, say, the euro is that, and one of the reasons why Britain wanted to leave the EU is because now you have two functioning economies in Germany and the United Kingdom paying for the debts of Greece and France and Spain and all these other places that wanted to spend lots of money. With the BRIC, one of the problems is Brazil does not have the same economic policies as Russia does not have the same economic policies as China, does not have the same economic policies as India. And so if one of those countries goes into massive amounts of spending for public works projects, then it's going to deflate the currency. In the United States, the decision on the Fed rate is, while it's controversial how that decision is made, it's one Fed rate for an economy that's $23 trillion a year. And so while you may have a lot of spending in some cases, you won't have a Greece that's going to spend so much money that Germany ends up paying for it to the same extent. And so that's why I have a hard time believing these decentralized, and I don't mean like cryptocurrency, but these decentralized currencies like the BRIC one is going to be able to stand up to the US. I don't think it's going to replace the US dollar. The
world is going to be bifurcated. Like in the future,
you think like the Cold War?
In the future, like conservatives might be transacting in the BRICS dollar.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Because the liberals are going to say, yo, you don't chop off your dick, you can't use this currency.
You can't use, okay, I see what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you might be on Putin's side.
Or maybe some cryptocurrency.
Or some crypto.
Got it.
Right.
Okay, got it. Now I understand what your point is. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So the world's going to be split up like that. It's already happening. We see the world being divided.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, it really is like one of the things I thought was interesting is how politics crept into the whole Ukraine Russia thing.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting because I don't know that this is necessarily a Republican Democrat American thing, but it really did feel like when Biden supported Ukraine, therefore all Republicans were against Ukraine and pro-Russia. And I just remember growing up in the 80s. Huh?
When did that happen?
I mean, I watch Fresh and Fit. I watch every the
Republican Party is backing the operation in Ukraine. You could ask Seb Gorka.
Well, I mean, you don't think more conservative? I mean, when I look at conservatives now, when I like if it's Tucker Carlson or whoever.
So then we have to delineate the difference between what you would call a conservative and the Republican Party.
Okay, got it.
The Republican Party.
Yeah,
is doing
I'm
one
sorry.
Thing and conservatives are doing
I meant to
another.
say. Let me just say conservatives.
Okay.
I feel like conservatives.
Conservatives are definitely saying fuck Ukraine.
Yeah. And it's one of these things where it's like I'm not pro-Ukraine or anti-Ukraine. I just like, why are we making a decision on this when a sovereign country was invaded? Because here's the thing. I know Donald Trump right now is saying that one of the things he would do if he were elected would to stop the aid to Ukraine. I do not believe that if Russia had invaded Ukraine during his administration that he would not have supported Ukraine. I do believe he would have supported Ukraine. I think that that's just one thing he can do to delineate himself from Joe Biden. And so I feel like my point is not pro-Russia or anti-Russia. My point is why have we made this a political thing in our country? I feel like it's a little bit dangerous, for us to pick sides based on like who Joe Biden is supporting.
Well, I think my point is I think the sad part about it is that we're sending all this aid, and it was like, okay, we're going to help them with this, we're going to help them with that, and it's progressed and progressed and progressed,
Sure.
And so that's the big issue right there. We got our own problems over here.
We do.
So they're a sovereign country, right? They were invaded. We stuck our nose in the middle of it. Why?
Because, well, I'll tell you why. Because they gave up their nukes, and we, the United States, the United Kingdom, and Russia all agreed to their sovereignty if they gave up their nukes. We agreed to that, and so did Russia. And then Russia broke the deal that we agreed to with Ukraine. Ukraine did a thing in good faith. They didn't steal those nukes. They were given those nukes by the Soviet Union, and they gave away those nukes, and the borders were clearly defined. And then Vladimir Putin puts troops on the border, and for 2 months tells the entire world, I'm not going to invade, I'm not going to invade, I'm not going to invade. Then he invades. So now we're just put into a situation where a sovereign country that we agreed to their boundaries has been invaded. And then here's the other issue, right? Finland and Sweden both said, hey, we're going to join NATO. And Russia said, well, if you join NATO, there's a threat of nuclear annihilation on you. And they're like, well, fuck you. We're still going to join NATO. And they joined NATO, and then nothing happened to them. And so the problem is, here's the issue. Whenever I have these debates, it's one of these things where like Russia has the right to oppose NATO coming forward. And my whole counter argument to that is Russia has a GDP the size of Mexico. They don't have the right to ask for anything. They had the ability to switch from being a petro state. They chose not to. The only thing they export from that country is petroleum and like cyber terrorism. They don't do any. I'm sorry, caviar and vodka as well. They do that, and then like we still see them. Do you remember? You're old enough to probably remember Ivan Drago and Rocky Balboa.
Oh, yeah.
Right? We knew it was like the Russians were the bad guys and America was the good guys, and somehow we've lost the plot because Russia still has no intention of helping the United States of America, and we're just like, well, let's just let them invade Ukraine. I promise you, if they invaded Poland, we'd have a problem. If they invade Finland, we'd have a problem. If they invaded Germany, we have a problem.
But Ukraine isn't part of NATO.
I understand that it's not part of NATO, but Kiev is a 9-hour drive from Warsaw.
Yeah.
The belief that the United States, if Trump were in office, that the United States was not going to invade, it was not going to aid Ukraine, I think is a little bit naive. I think we're saying that for political reasons now. I think they absolutely would have aided Ukraine. Here's the other issue, is that them coming in and them invading a sovereign country, them doing so, it's just one of these situations where it's like Ukraine asked to join NATO in 2008, and NATO said, no, we're not going to let you join because we know that it'll start up stuff with Russia. So they didn't join NATO.
Gorbachev had the handshake deal on that.
Well, that's like it was.
We would not push east past Germany.
Yes,
or something
yes,
like
but
that.
it was in 2008. It was still Putin who was president.
Correct.
Yes, and after Yeltsin, and in that situation, they agreed to not join NATO, or NATO agreed to not have them join, and they still invaded. It's one of these situations where it's like, you threaten me, and then I go along with your threat, and you still attack me. Then what was the point of me going on with your threat? Yeah. And the second problem is this: is like if the threat is we shouldn't be involved in this because it's going to start World War III, then why couldn't Russia just invade Mexico?
You know what the issue with the Russian and Ukraine situation is?
Mm-hmm.
It's like this is a very controversial take.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is a very controversial.
That's
take.
what we're here for.
Let's just prep that. They the same people, man.
To a certain extent,
Ukrainians and Russians are the same people. Ukraine, we're talking about Kiev.
Yeah,
Kiev is the center of Rus. Rus becomes Russia. Like Russia is born out of Kiev.
Okay,
that's where
that is definitely a controversial take. I think a lot of Russian people would not agree with that.
If you ask the Russian people, you ask a Ukrainian. Next time you run to a Russian person, ask somebody Ukrainian.
I'm going to write into one at 6:00. Actually, we're going to have a conversation with one here in a little bit.
I need you to ask them a couple of questions.
Yeah.
One of them is, do you have a family member in Ukraine?
Yeah, they probably do. Yeah, a lot of them do. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
This guy, Glenn.
You see what I'm saying? Like, what are we talking about here? That's like saying, oh, this person's from Georgia and I'm from New York and we're not Americans. Like, what are we doing here? Let's stop.
Yeah,
man.
but the invasion.
There's a global diplomacy that wants to draw that line of demarcation between the two territories.
Yeah.
Then the Donbass region and the other one is under fire, but there's parties in Kiev.
Yeah.
Why are there parties in Kiev?
Because Russia's military sucks. That's actually why.
Oh, you think that's what it is?
I think they're horrific. I think this is one. I think that this will go down in 50 years. It's one of the worst military operations that's ever been done.
I think it doesn't make sense to hit Kiev.
I think it doesn't make sense to hit Kiev, but I also think it doesn't make sense to go 15 months into a war that you can't afford. Like the United States, say whatever you want about their invasion of Iraq. They did it in 3 weeks and it didn't hurt the GDP. This thing has shrunk Russia's GDP by 3% every quarter. They've already lost 1,500 tanks and 400 fighting aircraft. The United States.
Question?
Go ahead.
How many people are they fighting? How many countries are they fighting?
Ukraine. Oh, they're fighting all of NATO. Russia's fighting all of NATO, right?
So it's like you saying somebody getting jumped, and you like, oh, they can't win the fight. They're getting jumped, okay?
Yeah, but they aren't getting jumped. They invaded. They started the revolution in Donbass, and yes, they started the revolution in Donbass, and they invaded the country.
No. See, this is one of those situations where people have been propagandized with the same propaganda that said Hussein has weapons of mass destruction.
Sure.
This is the same thing. So if you believe Putin invaded Ukraine for no reason at all,
I know
under the same propaganda.
I believe
there is a legitimate reason why he's decided. And what I truly believe is the most logical explanation is the fact that Ukrainian fucking Nazis are over there knocking people over.
Well, the Ukrainian Nazis that you're referring to that's less than 1% of the population, and they hold no seats in the House or the Senate there.
That means nothing, because a man with a gun can control a crowd of thousands.
Right, but you have a Jewish president and a Jewish prime minister that are supposedly supporting Nazis. That doesn't make a ton of sense. That's number one. And number two,
Wall Street financed the Nazis in Germany. What do you mean? GE was all produced by.
Yeah, correct. And Ford did stuff too. But I don't think that correlates to Nazis.
Matter. If somebody is going to make a play, they're going to make a play. Not going to make a play based on race.
There's no verifiable evidence whatsoever that Nazis run Ukraine. Absolutely none. That has been debunked 100 times. So that's the first thing.
Say they ran Ukraine. Yeah. That's gaslighting. What you just did.
Okay. I apologize. I'm not saying you said it, but that is what that's what Vladimir Putin said. When he did invade.
There are regions where they probably locked down and were terrorizing citizens, and there's a lot of accounts of this.
Wouldn't a more probable reason for the invasion of Russia into Ukraine be that NATO is literally on its doorstep? So basically,
wait, why didn't they invade Finland then?
Yeah.
Why didn't they invade Sweden? Why didn't they invade Latvia? Why didn't they invade Estonia? Why didn't they invade?
Yeah, but I'm not Putin. I can't answer that. But see, like, how would America respond if an invading country was on the border of Mexico and America with rockets and things like that? You know what I mean?
No, I'm not saying Russia doesn't have the right. This is not a point about whether or not they have the right. My point is Ukraine has the right to defend themselves, and they have the right to ask for help.
Ukraine is not defending themselves.
How are they not defending themselves?
We doing all the work.
No, agreed.
We sent them another $50 million.
No, but we're not sending them people though. They're people. I'm
literally right now.
They have 100,000 casualties.
Versus Putin,
right? But
I have no choice in the matter.
Yeah, but you're not sending U.S. citizens are not going over there to fight against Russia. It's 100,000 people in Ukraine.
Citizens aren't going over there to fight.
United States citizens. If you're telling me
have boots on the ground.
The United States has boots on the ground fighting against the Russians.
Okay, all right. Just make sure we do got boots on the ground.
Yeah, but like, what are you referring to? Are you saying entire U.S. battalions of M1 Abrams tanks are going in there and fighting against the Russians? Are you saying that we're fighting F-22 sorties?
Arms.
I agree with you. Money and arms. That's different than human beings.
Wouldn't you think like
some resources, like this whole idea?
They are different. Resources and humans are different.
No.
Okay.
They're not. That's a false statement, what you just made, Michael, and I'm going to prove it to you right now.
Okay.
When you apply for a job, who do you turn your application into?
To human resources. Right. But human resources is not, human resources are different than the resources that we've given to Ukraine. Like, I'll give you an example.
Coal is different from diamonds, right? Yes, we know they're different, but they're resources, right? So I can send you human resources. I can send you financial resources. I can send you military resources, ammunition. I don't care how you're sending it. You're sending resources to a belligerent nation.
So I think it's pretty different if I have to send my son to Ukraine versus if I'm sending money. And if you want to argue whether or not either one is moral, that's fine. But there's a difference between in North Korea, where actual Russian fighters were fighting against the United States, than we're talking about here.
But you just created a straw man argument.
What do you mean?
I
haven't finished the argument, but go ahead.
No, that's a straw man argument. Like, I would not want to send my son overseas. I am happy,
yes,
which is a good point you made, that it's just money.
Yes.
Because if I had to send my son, there's going to be some problems.
Of course.
Yeah, right?
Of course.
Yes. That's not the argument I'm making. My argument is there are resources.
And I don't disagree with that at all. And by the way, I think this actually is to my point that Russia, there's no reason for Russia to be involved in this anymore because they can't win this battle. If the defense spending for NATO is $1 trillion and the defense spending for Russia is $80 billion,
how old is this war between the West and Russia?
Man, I would say probably the Warsaw Pact would probably be at the beginning of it.
What year was that?
Warsaw Pact is 1939, 1940. Is that correct? 1939. The invasion of Poland is September 1st, 1939. I believe.
It's older than that.
But between the Soviet Union and the United States, well, the Soviet Union wasn't around until 1914, somewhere around there is the Bolshevik Revolution, somewhere in that area. Yeah. I don't think the Tsarist Russia had a problem with the United States, nearly to the
Tsarist Russia. You know, the Tsarist Russia financed the North
in the Civil War. I can see that. Yeah,
you know, so the history between America and Russia. In fact, that's the whole reason we have Alaska, because Russia was like, "Yeah, you got to take this bitch ass territory back because we don't want that." Right. Yeah. In fact, Russia eliminate serfdom in 1861. We eliminate Emancipation and Proclamation. We eliminate 1864. 1864.
The proclamation's 1864. The 13th Amendment's January 1st, 1865. Unless you live in Texas, then it was June 19th, 1865.
There you go. That is a gesture to Russia. So there is a long history between the West and Russia. Now, Russia is like the primary power of, let's just say white people.
Okay.
See,
just to make the conversation interesting.
It's always got to be a white person.
Let's go 4 hours.
Just to make the conversation interesting,
Okay.
right? It's different types of white people on the planet, right?
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's Europe and America versus Russia.
Okay. Don't want to be part of Europe. So I think Russia kind of made their bed in that situation. You see what I'm saying? Like
I don't think Russia had a choice in the matter.
I think Russia could have chosen to not be belligerent.
Let me tell you why I don't think they had a choice in the matter. Because they're looking like, yo, we feed Europe.
Okay. Talking about petroleum and grain. Yeah, for sure.
They feed Europe. And they're like, you want me to become a subservient under you? No, you should fall under my rule.
Yeah.
Right? That's one of the last crowns to fall, too. Tsar Nicholas.
Yeah.
Through democracy, right? So Russia had a huge wealth base in that time period.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So like you can't really just say, these blanket statements about how Russia is or was or operated.
Let me ask you this, Mike.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to like Europe, for instance, like how bad are they hurting because Russia's cut them off?
I think they were hurting bad, and that has significantly reduced the price of petroleum recently in the last 2 quarters. Inflation in the United States, by the way, it went from like 11% down to 3.2% in the last quarter. So what's happened is the people in Germany, I have several clients in Germany, and they've told me what's happened is they've been able to acquire natural gases from other places. You're right. The majority, it's like 40% of petroleum that Germany was using was coming through Russia. And a lot of it was coming literally through Ukraine. And to your point before, why is Russia invading? I don't think it's because of an expansion of NATO. I think it's because they recognize there was the 20th largest oil reserve on the planet is in Ukraine. They weren't able to get to that oil 30 years ago because of the technologies in shale drilling. And Ukraine is going to let Western countries come in there and extract that oil. So now Russia not only cannot ship their oil through Ukraine, now Ukraine's going to sell their own oil to Germany. And they're in the next year, all those NATO countries are going to be receiving a shipment of 200 F-35 Lightnings. And at that point, now Finland, Denmark, Sweden, Germany all have air supremacy over Russia because Russia doesn't have anything in their arsenal that can stand up to an F-35 Lightning. So now that's the reason why I think they invaded. I don't think it had anything to do with Donbass.
So oil.
Anything, I think it's absolutely. When you're 60% of your government revenue comes from one substance, petroleum, I absolutely think this is because of oil. And he could not give 2 fucks. Vladimir Putin couldn't give 2 shits about the people in Donbass. He doesn't care at oil. He just needed it as a pretense to take Crimea and to use Donbass as a land bridge to get down to Crimea. That's the only reason why he did it.
So then basically he just did the U.S. playbook.
Yeah, exactly. And I am familiar with the playbook because I was part of it. However, the difference with the situation in because I'm a former U.S. Air Force captain. The difference in this situation is that when it came to Iraq, we didn't take over those oil fields. It actually China ended up taking a lot of that petroleum. What happened was with Saddam Hussein, the problem was if Saddam Hussein had all the petroleum that was, I believe at that point, it was the 6th largest oil reserve on the planet in Iraq, and was able to take, at that point, Saudi Arabia, that wasn't able to defend themselves against a land war against Iraq, then you'd have Saddam Hussein in charge of all the petroleum in Saudi Arabia and all the petroleum in Iraq. That leads to an untenable global economic situation. And I think that's why the United States actually invaded. And they use the pretense of weapons of mass destruction because people don't want to hear petroleum stability. We're going to send your kids to war because of petroleum stability. I think that had more to do
can
with
we talk about hoes?
Go ahead. That's what I was going to switch to that. Sorry. We can talk about that. You had a question for me earlier.
No, yeah, I was just, obviously, Mike, I don't consume a whole lot of social media content. And when we were before the show, I was asking you, I was like, man, how did you even fall into the position you're in? I was like, where is that bingo card, man? So let's hear it.
So I when I got out of the military in 2011, I moved here and I started working with a couple of like event planning groups. And one of the things I figured out was that like, what are we doing? 10 what? You got 10 minutes left?
Yeah, just because they got to be at a minute.
No, we're good. We're good.
Right?
We're good. We're good.
You gotta be at
No, no,
Oh.
I got 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Leave it.
Yeah, if I'm there by 6. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, we good. I just basically started throwing these events with a bunch of friends of mine, and I saw what they were doing wrong. I see like a lot of club promoters and people who generally try to throw events like this. They treat women like cattle, and I was like, no, let's use women to meet other women. Let's have women be part of the thing that helps me meet a bunch of other women. So I started a program where basically guys have women help them recruit other women to throw events, and then we throw charity events for domestic abuse, animal rescue. We throw events for homeless people, troops overseas, and for different stuff like that, orphanages, stuff like that. And so that's what we've been doing for the last 10 years, is throwing events, helping raise money for those different charities. But we use women, and like really attractive women. Their superpower is that they can get people to look. And so like Lindsay Palis will come to one of our events and we'll raise like another $100,000 for a different charity. So that's what I've been teaching for like the last 12 years. And in doing so, because I'm able to recruit, I now host the 3 biggest bikini competitions in the world. One of them here in Las Vegas.
Nice.
Yeah. What did you guys think specifically? Because I know you've had a ton of conversations with Rollo about this. What do you think specifically is the issue that's going on now? For me, I believe it's like a matter of like female delusion and men like having this inability to stop simping with certain women. I think that's led to an untenable situation is the dating market. What were your opinions on this?
It's the grift, man. Everybody's grifting off the masculine shit now.
Okay.
And they fucking the game up.
Okay.
You know, it's too many voices in there. And Rollo talks about this. He talks about how it goes in these cycles.
Yeah.
And he says to go mainstream, then it'll die. Go mainstream, and it'll die. Well, we're on that upward curve where it's starting to go mainstream. You're starting to see a lot of bad opinions out here. But the overall, I think overall, it's a net positive, though.
Sure.
It's a net positive because we need to have the conversation. It needs to be had, especially now when you got all the T people walking around and those agendas and whatnot. So it's very important for, heterosexual people to commingle and talk, even if they're arguing.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So you want more discourse, regardless of whether or not they're grifters or not. You think there should be more discourse?
Yeah, because it's one of the last places that we can actually have conversations.
For sure.
Because if Fresh and Fit or your podcast was a political podcast, you wouldn't have those same girls there.
Sure.
But because you make it about dating, which is still a political issue,
it is. Yeah.
It kind of changes things. So, no, I'm glad. My issue is, I think, the attack on men more so, where specifically black men.
Yeah.
I'm a black man, as you can tell. It's like we are the one group that gets attacked by both sides.
Yeah, you made an incredible point about the BLM situation, where it's like, if you support BLM, you must also support these. You can't be against these anti-trans, LBGT things. And somehow it's like, because I've always had an issue. I've had an issue with this back when I was in junior high. I was like, how are you conflating? Again, I'm not saying that homosexuals have not been persecuted. They absolutely have. But like, for you to conflate a homosexual today with what an African American had to deal with in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, I think is really, really unfair. I think I thought that was like, no, it's not quite the same thing. And so now what's happened is it's like, let's bring all our victimization, let's put it in one big pot of gumbo. And now if you oppose any of us, you oppose all of us. Yeah. And I always thought that was an issue. I've also said this before I get to a point. I think openly homosexual men are going to leave the LBGT community. Because you want to know why? They're lawyers, they're doctors, they're accountants, they're public officials. And they're like, I don't want to be drug into all this shit. My life is actually pretty good. I can marry a man and get the same tax breaks as being jointly married. My life is not that bad for you to drag me into the rest of it. I think openly homosexual men are going to become conservatives in the future. I think that's what's going to happen.
I can see that happening.
Yeah. Very conservative. Anyway. They are very conservative, period.
Yeah.
All the fucking gay men I know are conservative.
Yeah.
And I've worked with quite a few. I used to have a former company, a blog, an entertainment blog. So naturally we had gay men working on entertainment. Right? And they were very conservative.
Yeah.
Like conservative to the point where they were like, I don't like gay people.
There we go. All right.
Like,
interesting.
Sounds like Mr. Parker.
Dude, I knew an Asian bouncer in Los Angeles, and he goes, yo, man, I can't have any more Asian people in here. He used to tell me that shit all the time. I was like, what is going on right now? What's happening right now?
Yeah. So,
I think that one of the problems is like, I think LBGT, that term is the problem, because lesbian women have nothing to do with bisexual men at all. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like when you put them all together, it's like, again, there's a difference between African Americans who lived here, whose families from here, and African Americans whose families came from Africa, like within the last 20 or 30 years. They're very different. To put them all together is just, it's very binary. And so I think that's one of the issues. And so now what happens is, like you said before, you're getting attacked from both sides, because you need to, in order for you to be in favor of the advancement of African Americans, you also must be in favor of an LBGT narrative. And if you are not, then you are not, like, you know what I'm saying?
And then attack. What black men are like attacked on all sides. I just want everybody to chill, right? Because it's like, your black feminists, their main enemy is black men, and then the far right, their main enemy is black men. Black people don't vote for Trump, and look at all this violence from black people against our kids, right? So black men are actually like caught in the middle of this like a war or whatever that's happening. And I just want everybody to be like, yo, chill out, everybody relax. Obviously it's not reality. And then it becomes, okay, well, who's the bigger victim? And I don't like dealing with that shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like we're not about to sit up here and like cry about what's wrong. So there is this balance the balancing act between talking about male problems without sounding like a bitch.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is problematic.
And some people be crossing that line where they're talking about male problems so much that it like you sound like a bitch.
Yeah.
But they need to be talked about.
Yeah.
So like that is the balancing act, and that's what's really hard. I think Rolo does a really good job of that balancing act. I think Phil does a really great job of that balancing act. But sometimes people just cross that line. That's one of my issues with the
Do
masculinity
you think
space.
that like they should stop talking the problems to women that men have? Like, when we do our panel shows, we're talking with women, men have this struggle, men have this hurdle, should we just like stop talking to women about it because bitches don't care?
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah, they don't care.
So just stop talking to them and just talk to men about it, right?
So it's really interesting when you do that. So for instance, if I have a discussion and I start talking about like things that men can do to get better in life, a couple thousand views. If I have a one that's titled "Modern Feminist 304 Gets Destroyed by Red Pill," I get 100,000 views. So one of the problems is while I agree with what you're saying, Glenn, it's that type of thing where women are held accountable on YouTube. There are 15-year-old kids, boys right now, who are fucking addicted to this content. And when you do so, it grows your channel, and then you can spread out and go into other messages. I am absolutely not interested in the male victimization card whatsoever.
Yeah,
I am all about. I live in a country where I can work hard and become wealthy. That is all I can ask for. And have people throughout. I grew up in North Texas. If people held my skin color against me, absolutely, right? They called me I'm Colombian. They called me Mexican. I don't care. But the thing is, I was able to become wealthy, date the woman that I wanted, and live the lifestyle I wanted, and anything I wanted, whatever. Like here, I'll give you an example. The thing that Bud Light did, right, which hurt their stock. On the one hand, we can say that's terrible that Bud Light caved to a woke narrative. But on the other hand, look what happened to Bud Light. And look what free enterprise and the internet was able to do to, but my friend in Kindly Meyer, she lives in Nashville. She goes, no bars in Nashville, Tennessee sell Bud Light at all, sell any Anheuser-Busch products. So you see how like both sides worked. On the one hand, Bud Light had the freedom to choose this woke narrative, and then the American people had the freedom to punish them for it. You see what I'm saying? I think both things are great. I think one of the great parts of this, you said it, you called it a project, is that Mississippi and California can have different politics and we can see what works. One of the things I loved was that Florida decided to stay open during COVID, and Sweden decided to stay open during COVID, right? And the rest of the country and the rest of the world got to see, okay, what should happen is you guys should be seeing mass deaths. Oh, wait, there are no mass deaths. Maybe we should switch our policies. And that isn't what happened, but it was a project. We got to do experiments in different parts of the country to see what worked and what didn't work. But yeah, I mean, back to your point that you just said a second ago.
No, I think Phil was going to hop in.
You saying?
No, what's it? Oh, about the Simps?
Yeah.
Man, Simps make the world go around, man.
Yeah.
100%, man. We got to have those out there. The trick is getting guys to understand that you can't hold women accountable, period.
Sure.
I mean, you just let that go.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Don't get excited. Like, I'm not excited to hold women accountable. I just have a boundary. Like you're in programming, and it's an if-then statement. An if-then statement does not have emotion to it. if you violate this boundary, like for instance, if I'm Logan Paul and I see all these pictures of you with all these other women, then we're not getting married. That's how it should work. You shouldn't be happy about it or sad about it if you cross the boundary.
That's that.
Rollo and I, just to be funny, sort of, we both bootlegged the Barbie movie, and we did a review on it. One of the things that happens in the movie that I found like probably the most offensive is that Barbie openly just like disregards Ken. Ken, you're superfluous. You don't really matter. You're not really a part of my life. So Ken does what a good man is supposed to do and be like, well, fuck you, Barbie. I'm going to go make my own way and come up with my own shit. And the movie portrays him as immature for going against Barbie.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was probably the most damaging part of the entire movie, was this concept of like men standing up to women whenever women want to stand up to men, is that when women find men superfluous, they should just go ahead and accept their superfluous nature because their only existence is there to serve women.
My issue with that is, first of all, I would have never watched the Barbie movie.
We bootlegged it. I'm just gonna say,
I can't,
shout out to the Hindi people who made that bootleg for us.
You watched the movie.
Yeah.
No man's supposed to watch Barbie.
Real talk. It was hard. It was hard to get through. But Rollo said he watched it.
I'm gonna tell you what happened.
Yeah.
Y'all got caught up in the grifting. The great grifting. Y'all was like, yo, this is too many clicks. We can't pass up. And I respect it.
Yeah.
And y'all was doing recon.
Yeah.
And I respect it.
Yeah.
Because we do need somebody to do recon. Like, what are these bitches being brainwashed with, right?
Mm.
My issue is I could have filtered the bitch out based upon if she saw the movie or not.
Interesting. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Did she watch the movie? No good. I don't care. If she got to the movie theater, we got to cancel her.
Okay.
Well, you see it all over social media. A lot of these guys are like, yeah, these dudes have literally dressed up with their girl to go see that movie.
Hilarious.
And I'm like, what?
I was going to get Rollo a shirt that said, I am Knuff.
What?
Like,
yeah,
I was going to get that t-shirt.
That's crazy to me, man.
No, Rollo reviewed it. And I was like, bro, I got to do this. Because we were going to do a show on it. And I was like, bro, if I don't watch this, I'm not going to understand anything you're talking about. Yeah. But I will say, like, it is one of these situations where it's like, I do want to understand, like, listen, I've read Mein Kampf. I've read the Communist Manifesto. I'm going to read anything that I disagree with. Like, it's one of those things. I'm going to be open-minded to anything that I specifically look for authors that say things that I don't like for instance, sperm wars or stuff like that, where they say stuff that goes against evolutionary psychology. But what did you have an overarching like belief about where things are going wrong right now?
Things are always wrong.
Okay.
Throughout life. And the problem is people are looking at our problems today as if they're new.
Sure.
These problems have persisted throughout the ages, and therefore the solutions have persisted throughout the ages. And the problem is not enough women are wearing hijabs.
You think that should be the solution?
No, I'm just being facetious. But it comes down to so there's the 7 deadly sins, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the 7 heavenly virtues.
Sure.
Right. So it has these opposites. So I think Protestant church helps set some of this stuff up too. But there are guidelines in which we should live our life. And most people are not living up to those guidelines. And one of them right now has to do with sexual promiscuity. There's much lechery and licentiousness happening in the world today, and nobody wants to curb that. Now, if you have an intimate relationship with a woman, these are private matters, that's great, but it's become public, it's become pervasive, and everybody is participating in it. And it's a huge industry right now through OnlyFans and then other outlets. That right now is a huge problem. Anytime you have a country where there is no sexual discipline, what you'll do is you have a situation like Caligula, where the real matters in life get put aside, and then you have utter destruction and the plague. And that's how you know it's almost over for America.
Do you think one of the issues is whenever you have a polyamorous society, you have a small group of men at the top that get a disproportionately high number of women, and then a large group of men at the bottom that get no women. And as such, there's studies that show that monogamous societies tend to be less violent, and polyamorous societies tend to be more violent, because you have men at the bottom that have no upward they have no upward reach as far as relationships.
Say that piece again. You said polyamorous what?
So polyamorous societies, what they'll do is you'll end up with more men at the top. So look,
so which one has more violence?
polyamorous societies would have more violence. Like what you
Because
said,
men
with
are jealous of.
when you say Caligula, or in situations in the Middle East where one man has 4 wives and men at the bottom have no wives because of their socioeconomic status, or caste systems like in India, where you have massive amounts of men that have no options as far as getting married. Those societies tend to be more violent than societies that have encouraged monogamy. Is that what you're referring to? Because when you say Caligula,
I never heard that before.
There's some studies that talk about this, where encouraged monogamy allows for men at the bottom quartile at least to have one wife, right? If you do that, if they have one wife, then they're going to have, they're going to be able to have children. They're going to there's a lack of sexual frustration that happens. Whereas if you have a society where every dude is just losing to Dan Bilzerian, then there's a lot of men at the bottom who get very frustrated, and you have a lot of what are called surplus men who don't have any options. And then you look at statistics now, and you see that 26% of men under the age of 30 are virgins.
Well, we already have a society of surplus men. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I mean, we're talking about cavemen, like Pleistocene Homo sapiens. Yes, I definitely agree that would be the case. Very, like 40. We can look at Y and X chromosomes. 40% of men throughout history have ever reproduced, and 80% of women have reproduced. So what does that mean? That means that there's a small group of men, or a smaller group of men, that have sex with a lot of women. Not quite to the level of like gorillas or elephant bull seals, where it's like 1 man for every 40 women. But it's gotten to the point where it's like there is a small group of men that have options. And then you look at Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge, and it's 80% of women, 20% of the top 20% of women find 80% of men unattractive on there, or something like that. Or no, 80% of women are deemed, 80% of men are deemed unattractive on these platforms, and the top 20% of men are getting 83% of the right swipes, and the rest of the men are competing for 17% of women. So like that's kind of the situation we're getting to, which would lead to violence, more incels, and more men who are upset. Which goes back to your point about hedonistic behavior, because it's not men in general who are hedonistic; it's the men at the top who can afford it to be hedonistic.
That's true.
Yeah,
that is true. That's true. Where'd you get that information from?
The one about the dating apps is from a book called Dataclysm,
but just
the violence.
There's just some studies I forgot what it is, but you can look it up. Yeah, it tends to be more societies that have more monogamous relationships tend to be less violent.
The first thing I want to do is look at the populations of these societies.
Yeah,
right? That's the first thing I want to look at, because you might see a difference in statistics based upon populations, because there's many smaller populations where it's polyamorous and it's very peaceful.
Well, if it's polyamorous and young men are able to have sex in this polyamorous society, then that's fine. But if it's polyamorous and that the royal family are fucking all the women and all the other guys get no one, then there will be violence. If you were to look at like what is the major predictor of violence?
No, they definitely getting some pussy in these smaller.
For sure. I mean, we're talking about if it's like Jamaica, free love.
I mean, you got to share your girl. If you got 40 wives, you ain't gonna tell you, hey, look at him. He just sat over there. Look at this little simp. Go over there, give him some pussy, please.
Yeah. If that was the case, then yes, I agree.
This is what I'm saying. A lot of these conversations come down to how civil you are.
Yeah.
If you've got 40 wives and somebody ain't getting no pussy, you got to send one of your bitches over to give them some pussy. You know what I'm saying? Like,
but Jesus, you grew up in, what a great idea. If I had 40, that would be a great idea. But like the
most the king, right?
Yeah, always.
You're the emperor. If you're the emperor of this island or whatever, like, why wouldn't you? I mean, obviously she'd have to consent, right? Like, yeah. As long as she consents. But I mean, if you got 40, you can't take care of 40. You can't fuck.
That's
40
a lot of work right there,
man.
man. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
They just, like, for example, there's this thing created by Dr. Umar where he says, for polyamorous situations, you can, for your first wife, you can have a virgin, you have whatever you want, right? But your second relationship has to be a single mother. And I thought that was interesting, right? Like you have to pick up the baggage that's sitting around in the Black community, right? So he was looking at this as a thing for the Black community,
for the entire Black, so like a macro solution for the Black community. Got it.
One of the solutions. Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting, right? That is interesting. But I think what really comes down to is, what is the organization of how your society manages relationships?
Yeah.
America doesn't have that type of organization. It's because we don't have any unity. The reason why we don't have any unity is because we're a nation of money. So everybody's loyal to money.
Yeah.
So you can't have that here. You know what I'm saying?
Jose ain't loyal in general, man.
I got a question. You brought up interesting point. You said consent. Wouldn't consent be marriage? When you get married, you're giving consent. If you look from a biblical standpoint,
I think pre-1970s you're correct, or pre-1950s, but not now. I think consent happens even after marriage. Dude, I was in the U.S. military, and they straight up told us that if me and my wife were drunk together, she was not able to give me consent, and I could have possibly raped her.
Oh, I
How insane! Like I was looking
I'm
around,
just
like,
saying, like, I'm just
what's
like,
happening?
wondering
If she's had 2 drinks and tells me, "Come fuck me, daddy," she could still later on then get me convicted of grape because of the fact that she had 2 drinks and was not able to consent. The opposite was not true for me, by the way.
Well, I know, yeah.
Yeah.
But so is you're talking about fixing relationships here, fixing men and women problems here. Shouldn't we go back to what, like, do we need to go back to some older definitions?
I'm not going to agree to this on YouTube.
I know you're
We'll
not.
talk privately. There's no way I'm going to agree to,
should we
like,
go
yeah,
back with
women are married.
so
Therefore, they
everybody-
can-
everybody's trying to solve the problems going forward. I
Forward,
think
but they're
that
not
you got to
exactly,
go
they're not
back.
looking back at what
Yeah.
did work, right? So should
Yeah.
we, instead of like trying to fix different terminologies of what things are, do we need to just kind of go back and say, hey, you know what, this shit actually worked over here?
That's
Well,
why I
we
like studying history, because I
Yeah,
find solutions
for sure.
to problems by looking backwards. Yeah, you're absolutely correct on that.
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
about to get Michael canceled today.
No, I don't mind. I'm just not. Like, listen, women can still means no, even if you're married. I'm just gonna I'm gonna say that publicly.
Like, say that again?
Huh? No means no, even if you're married. All right. I just want to say that to the FBI who's watching.
Absolutely.
All right. So a couple people, I'm just curious to get your opinion. Like, what do you think about, for instance, like Nick Fuentes? Like, this is an extreme example of freedom of speech. I don't agree with a lot of stuff he has to say, but I don't agree with the fact that he was canceled on every platform. What do you think about that when we get to that level of speech?
Nick Fuentes is what I would call a tester of free speech, right?
Yeah.
You know, how far somebody is can go with speech is going to tell you, okay, here are the boundaries of your speech. So anybody who's going to be a tester of speech, like Ye and, you know, all these other individuals who speak, you know, all types of ways, Alex Jones, you know, even Rogan, sometimes, you know, he stretches what you're allowed to say in the mainstream media. When he came out with the ivermectin shit, they canceled him for that, or tried to. Right. So I love people who I love when people test those boundaries, because then I get to see, oh, okay, well, you can say that. And then what happens when you do say these things?
I totally agree with this. Yeah.
So it's very interesting. Nick Fuentes is a very interesting individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any opinion on this?
Actually, I don't even consume any of his content. Man.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard. He's canceled everywhere.
Yeah. So it's like,
basically,
you know,
his belief is that the United States should be a Christian theocracy, and black people, white people, different races should not ever intermingle and have sex. And then also,
I can understand why they canceled him.
Yeah, he also doesn't believe that bad thing that happened in the 1940s where they made those 6 million people go away. He doesn't believe that happened.
That's insane.
Yeah, so that's the other reason why he's not so much on.
Oh, it happened.
Yeah,
it definitely happened.
Pearl, you had an interview with her.
Yeah, Pearly things.
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you think overall? Like, so when I watch it, I thought you were nice, and then there were parts where you questioned her on certain things, and then she seemed like she backed down on a couple of things. What was your overall?
So when I interviewed her, you know, anytime I interview somebody, my goal is to make you look good, right?
Okay.
Or I should change that. My goal is to give you the opportunity to look good.
I agree with that. Yeah.
So I gave Pearl the opportunity to look good, and I just felt like she sort of shunned away, and I wanted her to just say what you mean and be convicted. You know, have some conviction on what it is that you're saying, so I can go, hey guys, this is a real individual. Go support her, right? Because we need more people on the right with these messages. I don't want to delete any voice. And what it seems to me was there was a lot of question dodging, and I'm not used to my guests question dodging. I'm used to my guests answering my questions. And I've had, you know, Scott Adams on, who's a master of persuasion, and he knows how to dodge my questions. And I allow him to dodge my questions because at least out of that, he gives me good content.
Sure.
So if you're going to dodge my question, at least say something. She was dodging the question and wasn't even making content. So I'm like, no, like, tell me what you think. Like, I'm not going to be mad at you. And it felt, I think she thought I was trying to set her up.
You specifically talking about the reparations discussion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But other parts of the conversation, right? Like the beginning of the conversation, I asked her, I said, did you have any black friends growing up? And she was like, oh, it's going to be, her attitude was like, oh, it's this type of interview.
Yeah.
When really I'm like, do you know who Hotep Jesus is? Like, I'm a friend and ally to white people and all people. Like, I'm not here to try and get you canceled.
Sure.
I just want to have a real conversation. Let's be upfront. Let's just talk about these things. Because that's the problem we said earlier. We don't talk about these things.
Yeah.
So, early in the conversation, did you have black friends? And all she had to do, like, nope, I didn't.
Yeah.
And that doesn't matter with how I'm operating my life now. And I would have been like, oh, Don DeMarco.
Yeah.
Like, stand on your shit.
Yeah.
There was no point in the video where she really stood on her shit. And then when we got to the reparations conversation, to me, I was like, I know all the good arguments against reparations, and you didn't give me any of them. Yeah. So I'm like, give me a good argument.
For sure.
But you couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And then I gave her the best argument against reparations.
Yeah. I saw that.
Just to show her, like, where is the level of thinking we're operating on? She's just not operating on level of thinking. And I think that's not because she's incapable, but she's a little girl.
I think as long she said that she's an entertainer, that's what she calls herself. And she said that she doesn't prescribe things. And as long as she says that, I know Rolo has an issue with her. He calls her a grifter. And for my whole situation is
no, he calls her a hack.
He calls her a hack. Sorry. And the thing is, like what you're saying before, she is. I just felt like it was really sad because she looks up to Rolo.
Yeah.
And she's. It is. You know what I'm saying? Do you agree with me?
It is. It's sad because like she really does.
She really looks up to him.
From
and she
Rolo.
comes in and she's like so polite. She's so nice. And I told her, like, she plays pro basketball. I don't know if you guys. She's a semi-pro basketball player in
no
in
idea.
the UK.
I thought it was volleyball.
Both. She plays.
Oh, she does both?
Yeah. And so I was like, dude, I want to let's do some content where we'd like work on post moves. Like, I want to play basketball against you, right? Anyway, so she does this and she says, like, I'm just here as an entertainer. And I was like, okay, as long as you're an entertainer, I actually don't have a huge problem with this. Like, if I had a discussion with a comedian about quantum mechanics and he's trying to give me this Joe Dispenza answer and he doesn't quite know what he's saying, I'm not going to be mad at him. That's not his job. So that's not an issue. So as long as she says that, I really don't have a problem with it. Whereas Rolo does so much. Rolo sends me abstracts and conclusions of studies. This was so unfair of Destiny to say this. He goes, these guys don't actually do the research. That is bullshit. Rolo is constantly sending me study after study after study after study, and we go through it. And often the studies don't agree with what we believe. And that is the reason why he and I got so close, is because all we cared about was the science initially. Now we have our own individual opinions, but like that was, to me, that's the difference. Rolo wants to be and should be taken seriously as almost an academic level of understanding when it comes to intersexual dynamics. And Pearl does not claim to do that. But the thing with Pearl is, because of her way of creating content, she's just blown up so fast. Also, she has a very unique, it's not unique anymore, but a unique technique when it came to growing her channel. She does, I want to say 100 shorts a day. Wow. She produces 100 shorts a day that feed back into her YouTube channel. That's she actually got to 1.5 million.
But she has a whole team behind her.
She has a huge team of people that work for her.
I wanted to ask Hotep because he brought up reparations, right? So, and this is a conversation that a lot of people are talking, especially if you go into like what was that, Clubhouse, right? And so here's my thought on it. Okay, the only reparation I see legit is the argument for after the Civil War, when they were, I think it was given like was it like Alabama or something like that in the agreement, right? If there were going to be any reparations given, it would be
talking about the Homestead Act.
Yes, yeah. That act, that would be the only thing that I would think that would be an argument for reparations.
Well, no, I think redlining would also be an argument. I think the GI Bill would be an argument. There are other arguments.
The GI Bill, I'm talking about like for specific to that group of people, because that was so, like
here's my main argument for reparations conversation. Okay. Whose side are you on? Are you on the government side or on you people's side? Okay? Yeah. That's my only argument. And that'll tell me everything I need to know about you.
Yeah.
Is you a sellout or is you with us?
Yeah.
So when white people showed up at the Capitol and say, yo, I don't agree with these election results, what side was I on? I was like, you go get yours, white man. You go get yours. I ain't coming to the Capitol, but I'm clapping.
I'm watching.
I might even buy one of y'all a coffee. You know what I'm saying?
I'll get that coffee for free.
What, you know it. Straight from Starbucks. So that is my argument. So to me, it just sounds racist when people hear the word reparations. They're like, oh, I have to argue against this.
Yeah.
And it's just like, why? You don't have nothing else better to do with your time. like,
But it
like
seems
there's a people who have a legitimate gripe against the government.
Yeah.
And what happens is the people who argue against reparations are hit with they're brainwashed by counter propaganda, where they misconstrue it and say this is a violation of white people and white people have to atone.
Yeah.
That's not the conversation
what
that we
it
have
is.
here. Then what you do is those people who are against reparations will argue every election year on why black people need to leave the Democratic Party, and they point out everything the Democratic Party
But
did to white people.
people.
I'm like, you just told me why we deserve reparations. They fucking did, LBJ and welfare and this, and look, they've been mayors of your cities for 50 years. Look, if I put tax money into a city for 50 years, 100 years, a state, 100 years, and I need my money back.
Exactly.
I need my money back. So when you make these arguments against it, I just gotta say, oh, you just don't like black people.
Yeah,
That has to be it.
That would exactly.
Unless you want to argue against a specific argument. Now, if the person said, yo, white people owe me reparations, and you want to argue that, all right, yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
That's not the argument. The argument is the fucking United States government is run by a bunch of pieces of fucking shit. And everybody in this country deserves fucking reparations.
Mm-hmm.
That's my point. So when I talk about reparations, I don't say reparations for black people. I say reparations for all people. But when black people say they want reparations, I'm not an advocate of that. I keep my mouth shut. There's a specific group of people who said, yo, the government owe me some money. And I'm like, well, I don't fuck with the government anyway. So that's not my business.
Would you think how the income tax was implemented?
Yeah, 1913.
Yeah,
all
and
that.
how it was supposed to end, right?
Yeah.
That's a form of reparations.
Yes, that's the argument. That's the first thing I would go to. Yeah, we got fucking ganked like a long time ago, like over 100 years ago. Everybody's
stop
country got
taking our
ganked.
income taxes.
Yeah, like why are we still getting taxed? Like, oh my god, Mike's like, oh my god,
Mike's like,
the
okay,
IRS
guys.
is about to call us up now and audit this. But that's the issue. When people talk about reparations, it's like I don't even have debates about reparations because I don't give a fuck, right? Like,
I think it's interesting because the way it triggers people. I think that's kind of what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So why would it trigger a white person?
Yeah. It doesn't
And it would trigger a white
It doesn't
person
bother me at all.
because, well, some white people, it would trigger them because they've been propagandized.
Sure, of course.
By the other side.
The arguments I would see would be like, how do you choose how much reparations go to which person? And you'd have to go back and look at their lineage, and you'd also have to find
You've gotten too deep in the weeds.
right. But that would be one of the arguments for specific reparations for those who were people who were descendants of slaves, or people who have been the victimization of redlining, the GI Bill, or any other thing. Like you were saying before, it was not Deloitte and Touche. What was the name? of the
No.
company?
Here's what I'm saying, Mike. Here's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Fuck all them details about tracking and this and that, right?
Mhm.
If Michael Sartain want to go down to the motherfucking precinct and put, yo, I need reparations. I'm part of this reparations bill and I'm black. Hotep Jesus gonna say, go get yours.
There we go.
We robbing the bank. Everybody, come on. You know what I'm saying? We looting.
Hey,
Yeah.
what about me? Can I get some though, man? That's
Yeah. You got black somewhere in your lineage, just like I got white somewhere in your lineage. Claim that shit. Let's go fucking rob the bank, man. Like,
I have 5% North African.
there you go. He's in.
That's it.
You
We're
know,
done.
like
That's it. That's the one.
like fuck the government. You know how much money they owe us? Like
Yeah.
they look. That's the other thing. We done sent all this money to Ukraine, and we arguing about we can't give black folks some money. And the thing is, this is the other part of the reparations conversation. You don't give black folks that money, that shit gonna disappear overnight. Then what?
You mean you give them the money and then it disappears, or you don't give them the money?
No, you give them the
give
money,
them money. Okay.
and it disappears. Then what?
What do you mean? The stimulation of the economy? What do you? I don't say.
There's going to be huge stimulation of the economy.
Yeah. Do you guys remember the reparations thing on the Chappelle show? It goes, Fubu stock has gone up 7,000%. You remember that? That's hilarious.
Jordans will be going through the roof.
Yeah.
yep.
A pair
Timberlands
of
through
Jordans.
the roof.
Not Timberlands.
Gucci
Through the roof. Versace.
Everybody gonna be wearing Versace.
So if you're smart, you're going to be able to capitalize on, you could put your money in Benz or whoever. Like, Like we can all win. Like if you just took a second to just not be an idiot and look at it like, well, how can I win off of reparations? Like how nobody look at it and go, well,
That's
how can I
exactly,
win off
yeah.
of
If
this
that
shit?
happened, that's exactly what I would be doing. Because people were doing that when FEMA was cutting checks after Hurricane Katrina. People, you want to know who was winning off that? FEMA was cutting checks. Strippers were coming from all over the nation to Slidell, Louisiana, New Orleans, all these different places. Strip clubs, because these FEMA employees were getting paid in cash. Strip clubs were popping up all over New Orleans after Katrina happened. It was crazy.
That is amazing,
right? Another thing, what happened was after people started getting paid during COVID, right? There were a lot of people that started selling courses online. They started doing all this kind of stuff to like take advantage of some of that money, right? They were doing
hand sanitizer,
hand sanitizer, yeah, for
roof.
sure. They're like, okay, these people now have more money. Let's figure out a way to make money off of this. And I think a lot of people were doing that.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a way that you can pull that off.
But so I wanted to give people an argument against reparations. The argument, or one of the arguments against reparations, is after we give Black people the money, then what? You can't come back again. You can't come back again.
Yeah.
We've served our sentence. We've paid our penance. You've got your check. And that's why I want to warn Black people, like, when you get your reparations, you better make sure that contract is tight. You're going to end up in you've seen people go up in contracts and just get bad contracts. Yep. Reparations, to me, when Black people get it, is going to be a bad contract.
Yeah.
It's going to be a bad. Democrats are going to fuck us really bad. Pause.
There we go. One thing you talked about with Joe Rogan also was the concept of manifestation. And there's a lot of controversy when it comes to that too. When I look up the definition of manifestation, it doesn't include any work. But when you talk about manifestation, you talk about working towards a certain thing. And that, like, for me, one of the problems I had is, like, after The Secret came out, I just met a bunch of people who legitimately thought that they were going to clinch their butthole and fucking a Lamborghini was going to fucking come out of quantum particles. And the problem is there's still a lot of people who believe that. And then when I talk about other people, when they talk about manifestation, it was like, yes, you point your mind towards a goal, then you work towards the goal. And I was like, well, no, I'm looking up manifestation. There's nothing in here about work. You see how that gets confusing?
Can you look up this Latin phrase and put it on the screen? It's called ora et labora. O-R-A et labora. And basically just means work and pray. Like labora is labor, and then ora was pray, right? So ora et et. Yeah, E.T. labora. So manifestation, there you go, right there. Manifestation is a combination of work and prayer. Pray and work, So the issue with The Secret is they told you the pray part, and there was nothing wrong with that. They just didn't tell people you actually had to work.
Yeah, but it's a lot easier to sell a book where you don't have to work after you do the book. And that's what I thought a lot of people were grifting off of that. And there's a lot of people currently who are grifting off of that. And often I find those people to either be like extremely entitled or incredibly attractive women. Like I tend to see that, that type of situation where they believe that they manifested certain things in their life. And I think that part is dangerous. As long as people understand that the work comes along with the prayer or the visualization, then I think it's a good idea. I think the problem happens is very often it's sold in a package where you don't have to do that. It's just you remember Think Skinny? Do you remember that whole fad? People would think skinny and it would make them burn more calories. Like nonsense like this was pervasive. But man, what is your cost of goods sold on a thought? It's zero. If I have to make a book or make a meal plan or make supplements or make or do whatever, there's a cost of goods sold there. When my product is you need to think a certain thing and you're going to achieve a goal with no work, my cost of goods sold is zero. Exactly. My markup on zero is incredibly high. I make a lot of money off that. So I think that was something that was super dangerous. Yeah. All right, guys, we got a couple minutes here. Where can we find you?
You can find me at Phil Foster _ on all socials, and then Phil Foster's Growthcast on YouTube, and that's pretty much it, man. PhilFosterFitness.com, man.
Love it. Hotep.
Menoforder.com. All things men and masculinity. We have you on the tech side. We have you on the crypto side. We have you on the father side. So menoforder.com.
Awesome. Rolo wasn't feeling, he's under the weather for this episode. So hopefully next time we do this, we'll have him
I'm
back
going to cuss
here.
Rolo ass out.
You're going to cuss him out?
When I see Rolo, I'm going to cuss him out. That's my boy.
Yeah.
Let me just say his last piece. That's my boy. Rolo, I love you to death when I see him cussing your ass out. And you know why? You wasn't supposed to do what you did. And when I see you, you getting scolded by your nephew. All right, we're gonna fix this shit.
Anyway, man, we're gonna see. Hopefully, we'll see Rollo here soon. He'll feel better, and we'll have him out here, and he can come judge the bikini competition next Friday, where we can deal with more of the hedonism. Anyway, just kidding. All right, we're really happy to have you guys here, man. Hey, thank you so much, Glenn, for letting us, and Jabrizi for letting us use your space here. This place is fantastic, and we will see you guys here really soon.